Before we get going with this week's show, a word from one of our friends, TaylorMade. TaylorMade partnerships provide an unmatched entry and experience into both the racing and breeding side of the thoroughbred industry. Now you can be a part of top-level racing and breeding with all the rewards and less risk and cost. Medallion Racing has enjoyed great success throughout the years, with 66% of starters running in graded stakes and 25% in grade ones. The partnership was fortunate enough to have Going to Vegas run in this year's Breeders' Cup. Similarly, our Bloodstock Investments has discovered great value on the breeding side of the game, buying and selling such standouts as Improbable, Bast, Cutting Humor, and Flame Away, among others. Join us and experience the thrill with us, your family, at TaylorMade Partnerships. Now, on to this week's show. What's happening? Welcome into the Matt Bernier Show, part of the In the Money Media Network. My name is Matt Bernier. You can follow me on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Today is Monday, November the 7th, 2022. It is episode 138 of the podcast, however you listen. Thank you for doing so. Many ways to find the show: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, InTheMoneyPodcast.com. You can also watch and listen over on YouTube. Search bar Matt Bernier Show. You will get this episode along with the 137 prior. As always, please rate, review, subscribe, thumbs up, thumbs down. And if you are over on YouTube, make sure the bell icon is lit up so you get notified when new content is uploaded to the In the Money Media channel. This week's show is not going to be a sort of traditional recap of the Breeders' Cup World Championships, which just happened this past weekend down at Keeneland. This is going to be, if you're listening, it's going to be a bit of a, call it an audio blog. If you're watching, it's a vlog, I guess. Just, I want to go over the highs and lows. It's a reflection for me of this past weekend, because I've had many emotions over the past, to call it, I don't know, 36 hours, somewhere thereabouts. Driving, flights, the whole nine. Both positives, negatives, and everything in between. And just, I guess this is a form of therapy in a way, of just getting it out there, and hopefully this doesn't bore any of you to tears, or many of you to tears anyway. And let me know just about any of the things that come up as my baby is squawking in the background upstairs. Beneath the video player on YouTube or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Let's start with the highest of the highs. In the family, In the Money Media, the business manager for In the Money Media, Drew Coatney, wins the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, and does so in spectacular fashion. I had, in my head, planned out prior to the Breeders' Cup that this show was going to be, for better or for worse, whether I did well, I did poorly, I did anything in between, was going to be me going through each one of my plays in the BCBC and explaining the rationale and using some past performances and this, that, and the other. And then Drew went and won the whole damn thing. So I kind of thought that no longer was really a show worthwhile. And maybe it will be. Maybe listeners will feel otherwise. And if you still want to hear that, we can do that next week. But for now, the focus should only be on Drew Coatney and that performance. And I haven't listened to it yet, but if you head on over to the In the Money Media channel, the feed, and the podcast platforms, or if you want to, I'm sure it'll be over on the YouTube channel, PTF is doing an interview with Drew Coatney, the winner of the 2022 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Fabulous performance, and I will let him tell you how he did it, because when I was texting with him late Saturday night and early on Sunday, just kudos. I mean, unbelievable performance, and to do it the way he did it, spectacular. Really no other way of putting it. Speaking of spectacular, Flightline, who has now been retired, and someone today bought 2.5% for almost $5 million, which blows my mind. But he is a mind-blowing kind of horse, isn't he? 121 buyer speed figure, 144 pace-adjusted Timeform US rating. He blows the doors off what I think is probably one of the better classic fields that you're going to see for a while anyway. And I know it was a short field, but it was loaded with quality top to bottom. And I've seen some people try to take sort of the negative stance of it, of, oh, well, blah, 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 blah. If you're just denying his greatness at this point, I don't know what there is to tell you. You're not someone who will be satisfied, because I thought it was a thoroughly satisfying performance. It was a fantastic training job to get the horse to peak not once, but twice, but 3 times, but 4 times from John Sadler, and do it at different tracks and different configurations at different distances. He's just, I had long said, it's only been a handful of years, I guess, but in my time in the industry, the best horse I had thought was Arrogate, and then I looked at the overall total and totality, the body of work between he and Gunrunner. I said, well, Gunrunner's probably better than Arrogate was, just based on longevity and also his A game. And now this horse, no, he doesn't have the longevity, but I don't see any way that you can deny that his fastball, he threw 106 miles an hour from the first inning to the 9th inning, compared to some of these other great horses that they didn't do it as well as he did, or they didn't do it as long, or maybe they did it longer, but they weren't nearly as brilliant. You can chop it up so many ways. Horses, put it this way, this is the easiest way for me to sort of, when I was thinking about the race late on Saturday, as I'm just laying in bed trying to fall asleep, how many horses in your life, whether you're new to the game and young, or you've been in the game for a long time, can you honestly, truly, without, stretching it a little bit, sit there with a straight face and say they could have won in any given Breeders' Cup year, the Classic and the Sprint? There are so few horses that have that sort of brilliance, but also that stamina and just the raw power. Outstanding superlatives. There aren't enough to describe this horse. And I have no idea if he's going to be a good stallion. Frankly, it doesn't make a difference to me. He is just an unbelievable talent. One that, if you were privileged enough to see it, I think taking a moment to just, again, the folks that kind of wanted to either, find something to bitch about or whatever, I think it's a small group, to be fair, but that's a group that there's no satisfying. Purely from an athletic standpoint, I don't know what else I can possibly see in my life. I'm 33 years old. For as long as I'm involved in this industry, I don't know, and even if I'm not in this industry at some point, I don't know that there'll be another horse that I see that does that sort of thing. The Secretariat comparisons have come up. I think it's easy to forget that was 50 years ago. That it's not like that happened recently. So, and I know, we had 2 Triple Crown winners in short amount of time. You had Secretariat and you had Seattle Slew not far behind. But who knows, maybe there will be another unbelievable talent like this, but he just, I don't know. He smashed all expectations. I think anyone's wildest expectations, no one could have thought that he would have been what he was here. Another thought for me from the weekend is just, I guess this is kind of twofold, or they kind of go together. Godolphin's continued run of success, but I guess broader, the European dominance of our grass races. It's both comical and embarrassing at the same time. And I certainly understand, that is not a priority here in the United States. Grass racing at the highest level, it's just not. And I'm saying this, and we've seen time and time again that when our best dirt horses go to the Middle East, or you see one of the better Europeans try dirt, they just get destroyed. So I understand it's kind of apples to oranges. You're not dealing with the same scenario, but my God, I would like to see something be competitive from a U.S. standpoint. Rebels Romance wins the turf. Modern Games wins the mile. Silver Knot is unlucky to run second in the juvenile turf, which, by the way, he's defeated by Aidan O'Brien. Speaking of Aidan O'Brien, his demise greatly exaggerated. I know he had been on a cold spell, but whether it was Meditate on Friday, whether it was Tuesday on Saturday, whether it was Victoria Road, or, I mean, even Stone Age, who ran second in the turf. I think it's easy to look at. It's easy to look at a set of numbers and draw the conclusion that the trainer or the jockey, because Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien are attached at the hip, it's easy to look at the numbers and say, well, they've lost it. They can't do it anymore at the highest level. But there's no context in that. And that many of their best are not coming here. They have their eyes on different prizes. This time around, these still may not have been the best of their lot, and they still dominated. I think it's also worth noting, and it's something interesting, and I won't say the specifics of why. Well, I'll allude to the breeding part of it. Nick Luck and I, in the trailer on Friday morning or Saturday morning, I don't remember, we're just chatting. We're going through a couple of the races, and he said, I think Aidan's about to go on a run of old, in that he's going to just start winning a lot of stuff. And not that he didn't win a lot over the past few years, but think of the Aidan O'Brien of, maybe 10 years ago. Those kind of dominating runs. He goes, I think we're on the cusp of that. Primarily, he's suggesting from a breeding standpoint. Maybe he'll talk about that at some point on his podcast, but I don't want to throw any more out there than that. But he thinks that primarily because Galileo is no longer the go-to for Coolmore and folks, and now they are going to start spreading to look for who is the next big sire, whether it ends up being the No Nay Nevers or the Saxon Warriors, or we're going to have some of these other runners coming through. There's going to be a bit of a more diverse group of runners coming through Coolmore than necessarily just the cold, hard, runs all day long Galileo types that are Hickory. And I think there's a very large, serious distinction between those two and what kind of animals are produced. And if that is the case, then get ready for more Aidan O'Brien and Coolmore and Charlie Appleby and Godolphin dominating all of our big races. The championship kind of efforts that we saw both Friday and Saturday. On Saturday, Goodnight Olive, she locks up older female sprinter, or just female sprinter in general, with a brilliant winning effort in the filly and mare sprint. Forte and Wonder Wheel on Friday to lock up juvenile championship awards for the 2-year-old male and 2-year-old female. Both of them brilliant in victory. Two horses that I have not given enough credit to. And I think especially, Forte had run well at Keeneland. We knew that. He had paired up buyers going into this spot. The pace worked out for him. It helped him a little bit, but he was clearly the best horse in the race. But Wonder Wheel especially, because she did it in such a different dynamic than she had won the Alcibiades. I just did not envision that coming. I still think that group as a whole is a little bit subpar, but she is certainly the best of that group. And I see no reason, if she's shown that versatility, why she can't continue on as a 3-year-old and improve as more time goes by. Those are just a few of the efforts, and clearly, include Flightline in there. He sewed up Horse of the Year and all the other awards and accolades, but those three specifically sort of stuck out to me. And then if Flightline, purely from a performance standpoint, Flightline is the barometer. But the moment of the weekend is Cody's Wish, winning the Dirt Mile with everything surrounding the horse and the connections and Cody and his family to win in the fashion that he did. and just sort of the emotion afterward. I retweeted it. Our producer, Lindsay Shanzer, tweeted out a link with the story and the race and the reaction and the whole nine. If you haven't seen it, it's over on my Twitter, at Bernier_Matt. You can also find it on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. There's nothing else to say. I can't. No words that I can offer would do any justice for it. Put it this way, I believe I tweeted something along the lines of, if you're not crying, you have no heart. I believe that. Now, on the flip side of all the positivity and the amazing stories were sort of the lowlights of the weekend. Some really poor performances from horses that we thought were going to be, kind of the bee's knees or extremely difficult to beat. If you recall, a few weeks ago, I did that exercise of talking about these short prices and saying, man, I don't see, am I really in a rush to go against this horse or this horse or this horse? And the only sort of piece that I threw out was, statistically, it was something like 7 of these horses or 5 of these horses, I don't remember the numbers exactly, are going to lose. And, it's up to you as the handicapper to try to figure that out, because I had a hard enough time doing that, and we'll get to that in a little bit more. But Jackie's Warrior, it's so disappointing that was his last race. He was just so blah. I knew he was in trouble when he needed a little bit of encouraging to go and get Super Ocho. I see there's no way that he's going to get this thing done. Golden Pal completely missing the break. He confirms many people's suspicions that he just was not quite as good as he was when he won the Breeders' Cup last year. Nest. Yeah, she was very wide, but I thought she was fairly terrible. And that's disappointing for me as someone who was a Nest believer. And I still think she's extremely talented. One poor effort should not, undo an entire campaign's worth of good. The same goes for Jackie's Warrior and Golden Pal. These are still extremely talented horses. They just, for whatever reason, did not bring their A game on the biggest stage. And, I said it during the broadcast, and I said it in podcast. Jackie needed that race. I think his legacy is much different now than it would have been had he won a Breeders' Cup. And not only did he not win one, he went 0 for 3. I won't hold the first 2 against him. I've gone on record saying why. But still, the fact of the matter is he is 0 for 3. His career is come to an end without a Breeders' Cup victory in 3 tries. And Nation's Pride was fairly terrible in the turf. And that one I don't feel particularly bad about saying. I was going with the 2 Godolphin horses and Stone Age. And I don't feel all that bad about that, because clearly Godolphin, Charlie Appleby, and William Buick thought Nation's Pride was the one to go with, because he chose that one. And how often does William Buick choose wrong? But a fairly terrible performance. I say that he finished 5th, but it was not at no point did he look like he was really traveling like a winner. Rebels Romance, on the other hand, did. The minute James Doyle got him outside, you knew he was going to kick. And then some sad stories. The 2 real sad stories, Epicenter and Domestic Spending. And Epicenter, it sounds like, or knock wood, you hope it's going to be okay. Saw pictures of Steve Asmussen with him earlier. He's walking around. We'll find out. Hopefully, everything, the prognosis is good and he continues to improve and get healthy. And look, if we never see him on the racetrack ever again, that's fine. As long as he's happy and healthy and he can go and live out a good, long life from here on, that's all that matters. Domestic Spending, wait to hear any kind of an update. I haven't seen since, but it sounds like it's a rather severe injury and it's very serious. And, you hope everything turns out okay. Not because they are superstar horses, but because they're horses, and you just want them. You don't want any horse to get hurt. That's not, stating the obvious. I think anyone that not just cares about the game, but cares about, that has a heart. You don't want to see any animal get hurt. So you hope that both of them come through, and again, whether we see them on the racetrack in the afternoons ever again, that's kind of inconsequential at this point. It's more a matter of for their longevity going forward. Are they going to be happy and healthy? Hopefully, both of them are. And then to my own personal weekend, I love doing live TV. There is nothing like it for anyone who has ever been fortunate enough to work in this kind of industry or knows people that do it. There's no comparison. There's nothing that can replicate that sort of buzz. I've said it to my wife before, my family, the idea of when you go through and we have these meetings and you kind of lay out how everything is going to go, and you do it again, and you have multiple meetings, and then you go into rehearsal and you rehearse whether it's a long piece or a short piece or whatever it is, and then okay, everything seems pretty good, but there's still the live element of it that it has to then happen. And assuming it's not a pre-taped piece, you get one shot at it. When the light goes on, you go. And there's no. It's hard to explain the feeling of when the producers or someone gets in your ear and they count it in. We have 1 minute to air. We have 30 seconds to air. And then all right, have a good show, and the music hits, and you know that now TV is happening, and those nerves and the butterflies in the best way kick in. And I assume athletes get similar kind of vibes. We're doing completely different things, but it's a performance, and it's so much different than this kind of a medium, where I'm sitting here, I have water, I have coffee, I have my lights on, the computer, whatever, But then there's the flip side of, the ball is up and, it's tip off or it's puck drop or it's first pitch or the whistle blows or whatever it may be. And on the live side of things, you just have to go. And I feel like I've improved greatly over the 7-8 years that I've done this from a broadcast standpoint. I think television wise I've gotten much better, but I expect no one can put more pressure or more expectation on me than me, and it's to a fault, unfortunately, where I don't, things I do well, I don't give myself the kind of pat on the back or love that I probably should, because I'm thinking of the one little thing that I should have done or said cleaner, or specifically the handicapping element of it. And I know this is my only job is not to be the handicapper, it's to entertain on television and put on a show. But I have a difficult time separating the two because I feel like one is so much a part of the other. And I have a hard time reconciling when I don't feel like I perform. But then when I hear from others that everything was great, I still don't feel it. And that's difficult. I still struggle with that. That is only, as a matter of fact, it's only gotten harder as the years have gone on. That part hasn't gotten any better. And I don't know that it ever will. And maybe it's a flaw of mine personally that I set the bar, I expect a very high level from myself. And when it doesn't come to fruition, I get very disappointed in myself. Like I've failed. Whereas maybe on the outside looking in, from a television standpoint, I've done my job. But I don't feel like I have. And I have a very difficult time with that, especially for an event like this, because it is the one event, I mean, not just because we work with people at the Breeders' Cup and we're friends with some of them and, the whole nine. It's the one event I look forward to all year. More so than the Triple Crown by a long shot. More so than Saratoga or Keeneland or any of that. These 2 days, it's what my whole year kind of revolves around from a horse racing standpoint. And when they don't go your way, not because you were unlucky, but because you were genuinely not good, it's a tough pill to swallow, because now you've got 300. Now here we are, 363 days until the next one, and which then leads me to sort of, again, the reflection piece of, all right, well, how did we get here? How did we get to the point of this past weekend being as disappointing as it was from a performance standpoint? Excuse me. I think it requires a bit of self-assessing. Where am I right now? Have I just completely lost the fastball on the handicapping piece? Is the process that once was good no longer serviceable? Am I looking at things incorrectly? Is it more the mental part where I'm putting so much pressure on to perform, and when it doesn't go the way I expect it to go, it all falls apart? I think the only answers are going to come in time. But I was listening to Lex Friedman's podcast, and he had Daniel Negreanu on, who's a poker player, for those of you who are unfamiliar. I would imagine most of you know who he is. And he was discussing sort of the sometimes the run of bad luck that players go on that then leads to this sort of, not the demons in your head, but the thoughts of, okay, well, is this just genuinely a terrible run of luck, or am I not performing well? Am I getting beaten, or am I getting unlucky? And this is probably the first time. I know I've had other instances throughout the years of doing this show, whether it's with In the Money or with the Daily Racing Form, of sort of voicing this out loud. But this time feels a little bit different, because I think part of it is, I don't think there was any element of getting unlucky this weekend for me. I think a combination of bad opinions, which is going to happen, but when it happens in such a massive quantity, but also the approach. And we'll go full circle back to Drew Coatney, the winner of the BCBC. Drew had a very succinct plan. And again, you need to listen to the conversation he has with PTF. I'm sure they'll dive into it. And when I heard it, it made me rethink the whole thing. In that, have I had the wrong idea from day one about an event like this, specifically the contest, the BCBC, but I guess to a broader point, from a public persona standpoint, have I been wrong in my approach? I feel like my philosophy has long been try to find things that may not be crystal clear, try to help uncover some hidden things. But then again, maybe it is just a matter of don't overthink it kind of thing. This whole year, I have had considerably more success betting on sports than I have on the horses. And I think a large part of that has to do with my process with sports being as grooved as it is. Now, that's not to say that I'm going to win all the time, but I am extremely confident when I go and make a play that, based on my numbers, I'm not making the play taking the short end of the odds. And I've always been very confident about that with the horses as well. The problem is I'm fearful that I have gotten to a point where I'm reaching too much in the horses. And I don't want to say staring a gift horse in the mouth or in the face, or however they say that phrase, whatever the fuck it is. Excuse me. But the idea of, are you making it more difficult than it needs to be? And I think you'll understand when you hear the conversation that Drew has with Pete about how he went about it. When I saw that and when I thought about it some more, I said, maybe I am missing the boat entirely. And I need, again, that sort of self-reflection, that self-assessment of, all right, maybe it's time to tear it down. And I'm purely talking from a handicapping standpoint. Again, I feel like I'm making tremendous strides in my career, broadcasting, things like that. But purely from a horse handicapping standpoint, maybe it's time to tear this thing down to the studs, then rebuild. Or shit, tear it all down, lay a new foundation, frame it up, and go from there. Let me know if any of this was of interest, if this was just something for me and no one else is going to find this interesting or appealing or whatever it may be. Beneath the Video Player on YouTube or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Yeah, I tweeted it. It is my favorite weekend, but it's also the most humbling weekend of the entire year. Both whether I have success or I don't have success. I love the Breeders' Cup more than anything in horse racing. And that's saying a lot because I love a lot about horse racing. But I think for me, and also kind of to put this into perspective timing-wise now, I think this is going to be a good time for me to sort of go back to the drawing board. I will not be putting out any selections for horses probably through the end of the year for NBC. The next NBC broadcast isn't until the Pegasus. And now for my written stuff for NBC Sports Edge, I'm likely to pivot over to college basketball for that article. So along with my hockey and my Premier League, and actually in the next couple of weeks, it'll turn into World Cup coverage. But horses are going to be on the back burner for a little bit, purely from a day-to-day standpoint. And I think it's probably necessary because I need a little bit of a moment of, we need some clarity to figure out what the goal is and what we're trying to do going forward. Again, thoughts, opinions, comments beneath the video player on YouTube or on Twitter at Bernier_Matt. Again, please listen to that conversation between Drew Coatney, the winner of the 2022 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Fantastic. And Peter Thomas Fornatal. You can find it on the In the Money podcast feed or over on YouTube. I'm sure they'll put that one up as well. Until next Monday, come back. This has been episode 138 of the show. Best of luck however you play, whatever you play, and wherever you play.